Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am Nick from Australia. Welcome to the NRL end of season reviews on all of the 16 NRL clubs. I will be doing this every day for the next 16 days. I'll be reviewing each NRL team one by one, and I'm going to start off with the Brisbane Broncos this afternoon. The Brisbane Broncos 2020 season review. Obviously a terrible year for the Broncos. They won the wooden spoon for the first time in their history. And it's obviously no good for them. But before I get into the end of season review, I just want to give a couple of shout outs to a couple of fantastic YouTube content creators who've been supporting my channel from the start and have been supporting my channel for quite a long time. So I just want to give a couple of shout outs to NRL Vids 090. That bloke's been watching my channel and supporting my channel from day one. So if you haven't subscribed to NRL Vid 090, I recommend go and subscribe. Shout out to Rugby League History. He's a good friend of mine. I've been watching his channel since it came out, and he's been a very good supporter of my channel. So go and subscribe to Rugby League History. Shout out to this other YouTuber that is only a young sort of lad, but likes doing a few NRL videos. His name's Tyler Smith. Go and subscribe to Tyler Smith as well. He commented on a lot of my videos, so I recommend go and subscribe to those free channels if you haven't already, and hope you guys enjoy their content. But without further ado, let's get into the Brisbane Broncos season review. And now, there's a couple of things I want to say about the Broncos. I was having a look at all their games for the year on the NRL app and how many points they conceded a game. They conceded 3 tries or more a game, except for one game this year was when they beat the Bulldogs. I think it was, what was the score in that game where they beat the Bulldogs? 38-8 or something? 26-8. So every other game, besides the Bulldogs game, they conceded at least 3 to 5 tries a game. Now, for a club like the Broncos, who are one of the biggest clubs in the NRL, they've got a fantastic support base. They've got a fantastic stadium in Suncorp Stadium. Fantastic people up there in Brisbane. And for them to finish last is a huge disappointment. And, you know, there's so many players in their team that have been there for so long and they've just gotten stale. And I'm talking about Anthony Milford here. Now, I know Milford's had his dramas with his injuries and, you know, he's had dramas off the field, you know, on the field as well. But, honestly, the bloke's been there since 2015. It's now 2020. Next year will be his 6th year at the Brisbane Broncos. And to be fair, he hasn't done anything since 2015. And the problem with Milford is he a failure or is he just inconsistent? I'm going to say it's a bit of both. Now, Milford was a fantastic running 5'8" back in 2015. He had a great combination with Ben Hunt. Now, when Ben Hunt left at the end of 2017, Milford was lost. He had no idea what to do. He was confused. The Broncos were trying to make him into a halfback. That didn't work out. Wayne Bennett tried to get him into a halfback when he was there. Didn't really work. When Seabold came, Milford was still the 5'8", but it wasn't really working that well. Seabold didn't really get much out of Milford. I remember last year, 2019 season, that they ended up moving Milford back to fullback at one point, which was just a mess. And, you know, defensively, Anthony Milford hasn't been... He's never been a good defender anyway, but the last couple of years, especially this year, his defence was so bad. I remember every week the Broncos would play, I'd back whoever the second row was running at Milford, I'd back them for a try every week because, you know, Milford's defence was always questionable. So I think Milford, you know, he's had so many chances to get this team going and help the team, but really, I think he's just become a bit of a disease. Just hasn't found that consistency, and I think the best thing for Anthony Milford going forward would be to probably find a new club and start his career over. And I think a fresh start for Milford is required. Whether Kevin Walters can get the best out of him remains to be seen for next year, but you know, I've had it up to here with Anthony Milford. I think he's done. And You know, if he doesn't do anything at the start of next year, then I think he'll be dropped. But he's not the only one with the Broncos that has been bad. They signed Brody Croft at the start of the year, trying to get him going. That didn't work out. Played well the first 2 rounds, and then was just an absolute mess. You know, they had issues with Darius Boyd at fullback. They had good young talent coming through in Jermaine Asako. He went missing, and he got injured as well. You know, I suppose a couple of shining lights for the Broncos. Katoni Staggs, a fantastic season for him. Payne Haas had a pretty good year in a pretty average Broncos team. You know, they've had some players like Corey Oates who have gotten stale. Milford, Darius Boyd, Matt Gillette had to retire due to the neck injury. They lost Josh Maguire. They lost some experience. Andrew McCulloch left. So you look at the Broncos team right now, it's very young, very inexperienced, but it's their own fault. They should have kept some experience, but they decided to let it go. Their big Jack Bird was supposed to be one of their big signings a couple of years ago. He's done 2 ACLs ever since he's gone up there, so he's gone now. Now, the Broncos season was an absolute failure, and it's honestly a 1.5 out of 10 season. They only had probably only 2 good games. You know, going into next year, I think the Broncos really need to figure out what their best spine is. I don't know who their fullback's going to be. They need to figure out who their fullback is. Their halves need to be looked at. I think they'll go with Milford and Tom Dearden. I think Tom Dearden's a good player that you can build a club around. He's a player of the future, so I'd be keeping him in the halves. They lost Sean O'Sullivan, who was one of their backup players. He's gone to the Warriors. I lost Darius to retirement, so they've got some cap space to sign a fullback. They were going to sign Bevan French, but he decided to stay at Wigan for another year. He would have been a good buy. So the Broncos need to go out and sign a fullback. They need to figure out if their halves are Milford and Dearden. If they are, God help them next year. I think Jake Turpin is their long-term hooker. I think he's a really good player. He will just get better and better. I think that fullback's got a lot of potential. You know, I think Payne Haas is a really good player. I think he's a player that you can build around. I think Patrick Carrigan's becoming that sort of leader, that captain sort of role. I think Thomas Flegler's another player that I really like coming through. He had a pretty poor year, so I hope he can develop and become better. But their best player of the year, in my opinion, was Katoni Staggs. And their worst player of the year, well, I'm going to say Milford and Croft. I can't split them. They were both very, very poor this year. Now, I've had a look at their best wins of the year and their best losses. So I'm going to say their best win, in my opinion, was round 1 when they went up to the new Queensland Country Bank Stadium and they beat the big rivals, my team, the Cowboys, 28-21. That was probably their best win of the season, to be fair. I think you could say the Souths game where it was the first round of NRL with no crowd. So, you know, they lost Brody Croft in that game too. So they beat Souths without a halfback in the second half. So they're probably the 2 best wins of the season for the Broncos. Their worst loss, well, there's so many to choose from. Their worst loss was obviously the 59-0 loss to the Roosters. That was out and out embarrassing. 48-0 to the West Tigers. Shocking. 46-8 against Melbourne. 58-12 against the Roosters. Even the game against Canberra, where they led 8-0 or something, and they got blown away 36-8. Their most competitive game, where I thought they should have won, but they got beat, was the game against the Dragons, where they lost 28-24. I thought they should have won that game, but they sort of just threw it away. That was a game where I thought they would win. And they got embarrassed last round against the Cowboys. All they had to do last round was beat the Cowboys, and they would have avoided the wooden spoon. And unfortunately, they got beat by the Cowboys. So they had some really, really embarrassing losses this year. Their best player was Katoni Staggs. Their worst was Milford and Dearden. Overall, a very disappointing year for the Brisbane Broncos. How will they go next year? Well, I don't know how they'll go next year, but I'm very concerned about them. Their halves are a worry. Is Jake Turpin ready to be a full-time hooker in the NRL? Who is their fullback next year? I don't know what's going on up there at Red Hill, but Kevin Walters has got a lot of things to work on next year, and I wouldn't say next year would be a year where you expect Brisbane to make the 8, but I think they have to improve. I think the goal for the Broncos next year is to get out of the bottom four. That would be their goal next year. But obviously, Kevin Walters will say, "I'll make the top 8." So, I think most of us out there, the fans and a lot of the experts will be saying a pass for Brisbane would be to get higher than 12th. A failure would be probably bottom 4. But Kevin Walters will expect top 8 because he's obviously a coach now and he coached Queensland for so many years and he expects Brisbane to be in the top 8. So his expectations compared to everyone else's are going to be very different. But I think for them next year to be a pass mark, they would have to finish higher than 12th for mine to get any sort of pass mark for mine. But, not a good year for Brisbane. But, when he finished last, the only way is up for them. So we'll see how they go next year. If I'm going to give a rating out of 10 for their season, I'm going to give their season a 1.5 out of 10. I know it's harsh, but look at all their games. They conceded at least 24 points a game. Their defense was terrible. Their attack was just absolutely disgusting. I think Katoni Staggs is a player of the future for them. I think he's the key for them going forward. Hopefully he can get back in I think he's not back to round 10, round 11 next year. So they're going to have to try and start the year well next year and hopefully avoid the wooden spoon. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up the Brisbane Broncos 2020 season review. I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 10. Very disappointing year. Good luck to Kevin Walters next year too. I hope he does well with them because it's not very often you see Brisbane going really bad. But we'll see how they go next year. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you guys go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Go subscribe to those channels already if you haven't already. Make sure you enter the giveaway in my State of Origin Game 1 preview. Go and enter in the giveaway so you can win yourself a jersey if you get the score right. Anyway, guys, until then, have a great Tuesday afternoon. I'll see you guys later.